Freaks and Creeks, a Dawson's Creek podcast, the show where four millennials who missed the boat 25 years ago take the dive, splash, for the first time. Join us as we experience the series with a fresh perspective week to week and see if our adolescent experiences match up with Dawson and the gang. My name is Cody.
I'm Stella.
I'm Mallory.
And I'm James. And welcome to the show. Let's see. We got some Cape Side correspondence to get into.
Yes, so we got our first listener email. Very exciting. So I believe last week or last episode we had talked or wondered about what the Canadian connection to Dawson's Creek was. And thanks to our listener who emailed us, and then on Instagram we saw a comment that said that Joshua Jackson, playing Pacey, is from Canada.
Yeah.
So there you have it, folks. Also,
hometown hero.
I just Googled Joshua Jackson and found out two things. One, he was in Mighty Ducks. And wasn't that...
That's what we
talked about this?
Oh, we spent maybe 35 minutes discussing the metatextual narrative of him self-actualizing.
Okay, well, never mind.
I ignore most of what you guys are saying, too.
Okay, so there's that, but then also...
Wait, I just Googled... I just Googled it, and guys, did you know Joshua Jackson's in Dawson's Creek?
Okay. Also, he has a child named Janie Jackson, or Janie Jackson, but when I first saw it, I thought it said Janet Jackson, and I laughed to myself.
I like Janie.
That's all.
Yanni.
That's fun.
That's fun.
Yeah.
Back to you, Mal.
Oh, thank you.
For the weather.
So, last episode, another reference to last episode, we talked about the random shift in Mrs. Tringle's name, and we kind of theorized, thought it might have been an accident.
I think you mean Mrs. Triangle.
So Joey called her Mrs. Tingle. In 1999, there was a movie written and directed by Kevin Williamson, his directorial debut and only movie that he has ever directed, called Teaching Mrs. Tingle. Yes. According to Wikipedia, he wrote the script before his work on Scream and Dawson's Creek.
Wow.
Yep. And so it's the story of a girl who's willing to do anything to become valedictorian, even if it means murdering the teacher that stands in her way.
She's a fucking ghost.
Guess who plays the student?
Mrs.
Katie Holmes.
Oh my God.
So Katie Holmes plays the student, and Helen Mirren plays Mrs. Tingle.
I love this.
Now, apparently production for the movie began in April 1998. So episode 9 of Dawson's Creek, which is when Katie calls her Mrs. Tingle, when Joey calls her Mrs. Tingle, was released in March of 1998.
Sorry, I just want to make sure I heard that right. He wrote this in 88, but then the production began in 98?
I don't know when he wrote it. But he wrote it before his work on Scream and Dawson's Creek, apparently.
Wow.
Yeah.
But production began in 98?
Yeah, so the production of the movie began in 98, yeah.
So we think she just made a mistake.
I wonder if she either made a mistake or maybe he didn't name the teacher until they started production. Like there was a title, but it was like Teaching Mrs. Whatever.
Bingle.
Who knows? Yeah. Isn't that funny?
This is amazing.
There's like Freakiverse.
So Wes Craven, who did Nightmare on Elm Street and all this stuff, he had a school bully when he was an adolescent named Krug. And so that's why in every Wes Craven movie, like the bad person, Freddy Krueger or Krug in The Last House on the Left, like it always keeps coming up. I wonder, Kevin Williamson, did he have a shitty teacher named Tingle Tringle Triangle that he's been incorporating in all of his work? Now, oh my God, when we rewatch Scream eventually, got to keep our ears out.
Yeah.
If there's a Leary or a Witter or a Tringle. That's cool. Thank you, Mal.
You're welcome.
That's really
Good
fun.
stuff. I like that.
So we got to watch that for a bonus episode sometime and see. I bet there's got to be at least like one or two vampires somewhere in that movie.
Yeah, for
Shocked
sure.
that there isn't.
Wow, that's amazing. Cool. Well, let's get into it then. So this week we are talking about episode 10, Double Date. This episode was released on April 28th, 1998. And interestingly enough, to me, though Cody might have some news on that, that's actually, if you've been following along, that's actually over a month after episode 9 was released. Episode 9 was released March 17th. This was released April 28th. In those 49 days, we had some pretty significant shifts in culture that I would like to talk about. Firstly, Titanic has been on top of the box office charts for what feels like 25 years. And during this break, it is actually dethroned, believe it or not. Do you guys know what the movie was to dethrone Titanic? Mal does, so don't.
I want to know what the iceberg was, baby.
It starts with an L.
1998?
1998.
Leprechaun.
Wow. No, it was Lost in Space. Yes.
That is not a good
Danger
movie.
Will Robinson. I watched that movie. I watched that movie in theaters with my parents. So I actually remember going to see this. Probably wasn't in that week, but yeah, it got Gary Oldman, William Hurt, Matt LeBlanc.
Yes, I thought he was so cool in that movie. He had that helmet that it looked like
Yes.
snakeskin. It was like when it would go over his head.
Very reminiscent of a certain video game that I can't think of right now, but yeah, I remember thinking that was so fucking cool. So yeah, that's the movie that ended Titanic's reign on the box office charts. Surprisingly enough, it only lasted 1 week though. And the next movie, a week later, City of Angels takes the top of the box office chart. Yeah, Meg Ryan and Nick Cage. Nick Cage is an angel who's like guiding people into the afterlife. And
That
then
sounds
he meets
familiar.
Meg Ryan
Yeah.
in a hospital and decides, I'm going to show her my true form.
Yeah, it's a remake of oh my god,
Michael or some shit.
No,
Feels
Michael.
like it.
Michael is
Yeah.
a bad movie. Wait, Wim Wenders, Wings of Desire. It's a very similar premise, but from the late '80s. An extremely good movie.
Really?
And like the most American thing you could possibly do is take a beautiful art house movie and turn it into a big, shitty, stupid movie with Nicolas Cage and Meg Ryan. But the best part about the movie is Iris by Goo Goo Dolls. Wasn't that like the main song that propelled that movie? I remember the music
wonder.
video. You see Nick Cage like
Yeah.
falling.
Oh, yeah.
Totally.
I know what the world to see is.
Yes, I think you're
I don't think the
right.
world will
Wow.
understand.
So that sat on the box office charts for 2 weeks. That's how much America loved that movie.
Versus 15 weeks.
Yeah. And then,
Lost in Space. Yikes.
right? Yeah. And then release week, it's The Big Hit, which it's a Mark Wahlberg film. And I think that about says as much as you need to know. It's Mark Wahlberg, Lou Diamond Phillips, and Christina Applegate about a socially anxious hitman who is an expert in his lucrative field, goes on a job and falls in love with his kidnapping victim, turning his world upside down.
What is this?
I looked this up. I have no recollection of this whatsoever. It's apparently a movie. It's got 43% on Rotten Tomatoes, so it's not like awful, but
What is it called again?
The Big Hit.
Mark Wahlberg's character name is Melvin Smiley.
Yes. Hey, I'm Melvin Smiley.
Affable hitman Melvin Smiley.
Say hello to your mother for me.
Oh my god, what a nightmare!
Yeah.
Yeah, I've never heard of that movie. It was number one at the box office.
Number one on the box office for the week of May 2nd, 1998. Isn't that crazy?
Yeah, no, thank you.
Little known movies. But yeah, so that's our movie update. Pretty cool. I wanted to really quickly, I know we have an episode to talk about, but I wanted to talk about the alternate title of this. As we've talked about, season 1, they have all these alternate titles, right? This week's episode, Double Date, alternate title, Modern Romance. Does anybody know this movie? Has anybody watched this movie?
Never watched it, but I looked it up. But
It's I think this is a cool, often these movies have obviously a very direct tie. This one is written, directed, and starring Albert Brooks, who plays a successful film editor with far too many issues that affect the relationship between him and his remarkably patient girlfriend. In the plot of this movie, Albert Brooks, who's playing a character named Robert Cole, I want to say, is constantly breaking up with and getting back together with his girlfriend, who is a banking executive, because he's basically, just like irrational and self-centered, much like Dawson and Jen. So we're seeing Dawson, obviously the relationship here is, Dawson is a film, quote unquote, filmmaker, and he is so tortured and so misunderstood. And his girlfriend, Jen, tries to give him the understanding, but keeps coming back to him, foreshadowing potentially that she's on her way back. So that's my update for the week of release for Double Date.
I'm so excited to get into it.
Well, I guess I have a few other things to talk about here. Written by Kevin Williamson and John Harmon Feldman, directed by David Semmel. This episode has quite a bit of fun stuff. It has parental coercion. I love that Mr. Manmeat co-opts his son into spying on his mother and monitoring the phone lines for him. Gaslighting your friends. Love it. It's so cool. I'm so over you, Jen. I don't need you in my life so that you come back to me. I love it. It's cool. There's new characters and locations. We got a biology class. We got a biology teacher. We got the carnival. We got the marshes. And then this is a little spoiler for later, but we got a new supernatural entity that I can't wait to talk to you guys about.
I, too, have a supernatural entity that does not exist yet, but I feel like will exist later on.
Oh, boy.
Based on some contextual clues that we receive through dialogue.
Oh, boy. I can't wait.
Also, it is officially autumn in Cape Side.
Yeah.
We see some fall color.
I noticed that too.
I love it.
Excited about that.
Any initial thoughts on this episode before we dive into the scene by scene? I know there's a lot to talk about in this episode.
I don't know. I felt myself excited about the development between Pacey and Joey. When I watched it for the first time, I just felt giddy. So that was fun. There were lots of things I enjoyed about it. I think also maybe kind of similar to last week's episode, it felt a little slow in some ways. I feel like maybe just the first few episodes felt like there was so much happening, so the last few episodes have felt a little bit slower, which isn't necessarily bad. Maybe we're just kind of ramping up for some more stuff to happen. But overall, I liked it. I enjoyed a lot of the music, and there were lots of moments that made me laugh out loud, genuinely, that I thought were just really funny. So, yeah, I enjoyed it overall.
It's funny. I actually thought this episode was paced well. I think you were saying it was a little bit slow.
I think so. Yeah.
I found the kind of 3 plot lines we had. I mean, it's more like 2.5 because Dawson and Mary Beth. Anyway, I felt like that kind of this season of The Bachelorette, gave me, every time I'd start getting bored with one plot line, we'd switch over to the other plot line and be like, oh, right, that's happening. Cool.
Yeah, I kind of agree. I liked the split stories. It was kind of the Jen and Dawson story and then the Joey and Pacey, and then they come together at the end. And I felt like the parents were kind of shoehorned in. That was it had to be,
we had to get an update on
had to put
needs.
that in, but yeah.
This is a stinker for me. Some of the stuff I like, I really, really do not like. I really do not understand the Mitch and Gale storyline. It's, as we said, very shoehorned in. But I also think that this episode has 2 things going for it. One is the use of metaphor with other characters to mirror the relationships that we already have set in stone with Dawson, Joey, and Pacey specifically. And I think that it was very tedious with what they're doing with, we've hit this note over and over and over and over again about will Dawson choose Joey or Jen? And it feels tedious. And I think the first couple of times that I watched this, I felt like I was in hell having to watch this over and over again because we're just treading water. Nothing's getting moved forward, especially when we get to a certain monologue near the end. It just feels empty and nothing, and we've already seen this before. But I think there was very good use of a visual metaphor in a merry-go-round that I think was purposeful in saying, this is... we are making this tedious. This has to break eventually. So maybe... if this episode's goal was to make me in agonized pain, they succeeded. And but yeah, like everyone else said, I like the Pacey and Joey stuff to an extent. And I fucking love Mary Beth. I think Mary Beth rules.
And I'm sad because I think this is the only episode she's in.
Are you fucking kidding me?
I think so.
I looked at her credits to see if she comes back, and I
wanted her to come back and redeem herself.
She's so cool.
Yeah, they just used her.
It was I was so excited because we're getting introduced to a new character that isn't just there to terrorize. She felt